The documented history of Muslims being organized and identifying themselves as a group of Muslims really began in the early 1900s. Saudi Majid from Old Dungalo in the Sudan actually came to Pittsburgh via New York and established via a charter for African Muslim Welfare Society. And from that society, he conducted classes and taught things about theology and philosophy and rituals in Islam. So that's the first recorded history that we have documented by many writers that put Saudi Majid here in the city. That was in the early 1900s. And I think about Saudi Majid in particular. Saudi Majid was a black African. When I say a black African, that means that he was from, not from northern or eastern, that he was from the area where folk were actually dark in color. And so the prejudice that the African American was feeling, he felt a lot of that too, because he looked like them. But Saudi Majid talked about the relationship of all Muslims, and he helped the Pittsburgh Muslims to see that they were connected to a larger community, and he encouraged them to embrace all of their Islamic heritage. And so he, being aware of the conditions, often would do things to help African Americans achieve their rights in America, and to understand the important part being part of the Ummah of Rasulullah was, and how important it was to educate themselves about their religion so that they could practice and assert themselves in ways that were appropriate for Muslims. The Muslim community in Pittsburgh has a history of tolerance, not only among and between the various sets of Muslims in the city, but also the general population. And as is often the spirit of Pittsburgh and other places, law-abiding people who do not necessarily present a threat are often looked on as just citizens. They were good practicing citizens, and they were treated much in the same way. You know, Muslims do not proselytize. They don't go about encouraging people to drop their religion and become Muslims, and and so these things are often perceived as threatening, and we didn't have that kind of presence in Pittsburgh. And so we early Muslims did not have confrontations or problems with the general population. So I think that the impact that the Muslims have, the African American Muslims in particular, have made on Pittsburgh is through example. The early establishment of schools, exemplifying the high value that they put on education. I think about some particular incidences that we've had in the city. I remember one woman, Sister Marilyn Pollard, who in the 1960s actually had a court case around her wearing hijab to work. And eventually that was settled. And even something as small as that made an impact on the people who came after, because Pittsburghers were accustomed to seeing Muslim dress. And we had established through a court action that this dress was permissible at the workplace. So these things helped to make it easier for groups who came later. And so when you look at the surface of things, it's like when you look at Muslims in Pittsburgh, depending on your perspective, your experience, the immigrant may be the first one that comes to mind. But in fact, the history shows us different. The old folks say, when you know better, you do better. And to be educated is to change. It makes us different people. Perchance we get to know and even to love each other. The truth speaks for us, and we must speak to it with power and consistency.
It was definitely a transition. I didn't speak English, so I had to learn. I watched a lot of cartoons. Ironically, Dora the Explorer is what taught me a lot of English. And yeah, I think it took me a while to really realize the nuances of what it was like to grow up in this culture and what kind of culture I was leaving behind. I know my parents made a big effort to make sure that I grew up knowing the Egyptian culture and the Islamic culture and what that meant. And then obviously through school I learned the American culture and Western culture. So it was kind of cool to grow up exposed to both sides. Well, I was pretty young. I think my most vivid memory is of coming out stepping outside of the airplane and seeing a bunch of bare trees with no leaves, and I was really taken aback by it. I wasn't sure what they were because I had only ever known palm trees.
Like people from the earliest of times, people who came to Ellis Islands, like there is this mistaken notion that people were welcomed with open arms at some time in the past, while it was not so. So every immigrant community that has come here has been through stress and unwelcoming attitude in the earlier part of their history, and have then finally assimilated. So we hope for the best, but just the labels like Muslim ban and the wall and this, it's just disconcerting and disturbing for me that children in grade school are talking about these things and how it is impacting them. At a very basic level, it's just disconcerting, because when my children who are 12 and 8 hear about the Muslim ban, they do not have the capacity at this age to look into what does it mean. All they hear is the word Muslim, and that Muslims are banned in this country.
But I mean, to the extent we are assimilated in the society, I mean, we are as American as anyone else. We have the same goals, we have the same approach, but the way we approach might be a little bit different just because we are first generation immigrant. And I don't think it's unique to Muslims or us. It's true for all first generation immigrants.
And so if I, going back to your question, if we're put in a position where you're asking us to represent a group, and that's an example of what we go through on a daily basis. We're always mindful of, am I being honorable in representing my parents who brought me up? And then how do I convey this to my kids, and that's part of it, without being too much in conflict with whatever they're running into on a daily basis.
So there's two sides of me. One part of me, of course, I'm born and raised in America. I've been raised in American schools, so I say as an American citizen, I'm of course pro-American. I want America to be safe, and I don't want any problems with people coming in. But then again, as somebody who, my family was in trouble and was able to come here and build a life here and start a life and become productive members of society and really be part of the American dream, it's kind of, you feel bad also in the fact that there are people that are seriously struggling and they need a place to come and be able to live freely. And even when I go back home and visit, it's like, no matter what happens, everybody's dream is to come to America. When you're here and when you actually see how the other side of the world lives, you feel so blessed, and you almost feel like, at many times I feel like, what did I do to deserve this? What makes me better than anybody else? And I really think about that all the time.
It's very stressful. It's very sad to see how the travel ban has affected the life of many immigrants. Immigrants from the Muslim countries, that they have more questions, delayed more. It's just the processing time takes a lot longer than, let's say, someone from Europe. I mean, I understand that what the system is trying to do, but in the meantime, specifically targeting the Muslim countries and indiscriminately delaying the process, I just don't think this is something fair. I have other situation as to the travel ban affecting mostly the specific 6 countries. Many families been waiting for many months for their family members to come in. Now I have quite a few clients from those specific countries, and their petitions are submitted, but in some sense it's undetermined as to what's going to happen.
We have almost 12 nationalities here in the school. From Uzbekistan, Russia, India, Pakistan, Middle East, and of course America, Canada, from almost all over the world we have. And this enrich the educational process and enrich the learning of our students, open them up to more experiences and skills, and make them more open-minded to other cultures and the diversity that we live. We cannot get away from diversity. This is something that we have to live. This is a country of immigrants. This is a reality that we live day in and day out. To have tolerance and to have positive attitude to deal with people from different culture and religious background is a good thing to have.
If I would like people to remember me, I hope that they saw or do continue to see me along the line, that I am a fair person and that I do have enough compassion that can supersede the call of fairness. And I try to be like that with my kids, try to understand them and be fair to them without being oppressive to what their experience is going to be as Americans. It was truly natural born Americans, whereas we're Americans, but we're naturalized Americans, and we can't escape that, and people recognize us as that, and that's important.
So each community is different, and if you look at the refugee experiences as one experience, it's not fair. And some of them lived in camps for so many years. All what they know is refugee camps, they're kids. They came here to Pittsburgh, and suddenly we are expecting them to behave like anybody else. Something with these refugees, they went through war. They saw death, they saw loved one being killed in front of them. Whether it's a wife that saw a husband, or a child that saw a parent, or an uncle, or a neighbor. You hear all these stories with torture and seeing a loved one dying in front of them. So imagine all these experiences and the trauma, and then going to a host country, because they all go to a host country, and they have to build a life for the first time away from home, and they don't know what to do with it. When they come here, for instance, the Somalis at the beginning, they did not use microwaves. They did not use buses for them to even, like train them to use a bus. It was difficult. They used to their kids playing in the field. So their kids will go downstairs, down the apartment, and play in the street because they're playing in the field, right? And then you'll have, children, CYF coming knocking at their door because kids are playing downstairs. And then you have to tell them that they didn't mean it. Their kids were used to play in the field, and there are no fields for their kids to play with. With Syrians, it was different. They are used to city life. They're used to taking buses. They're used to driving cars, some of them. They're skilled workers. Again, the problem when they came here is the lack of language, English language, and they can't get the certification for them to work in the careers that they have 15 to 20 years of experience in. Imagine, we have here 4 or 5 experienced welders. Okay? Do you know how much they can benefit if they work in their career? But then you have them working what? Cleaning in hotels. Not that this is wrong, but because that is hospitality, like that is the only place for them where they can work without using a language. There's a lot to do. We're still lacking programs where we can bring these people, assess their skills, bring them directly, give them a year, put them in low-income housing, give them a year, concentrate only English, and get the certification in their whatever skill they bring into the country. And this is the only way where we can benefit from their skills right away, integrate them and assimilate them in the community in a faster pace than what we are doing now.
Well, the mission is actually to arm our students with the knowledge that enabled them to be productive citizens. So in addition, as a matter of fact, of teaching the core curriculum that's taught in all public and private schools all over the United States, we teach them Arabic language, we teach them Quran and Islamic studies. Our kids, thank God, we say Alhamdulillah in Arabic about thank God, we have good records of achievement test, which is Stanford test. Our school students achieved above average, above the national average. And that's a good sign, which means they are good citizens in terms of absorbing the American curricula, and also they are very knowledgeable of Arabic language, Islam, and Quranic studies. So we don't want them to live that identity crisis. We want them to feel that they are as much Americans and as much Muslims. In other words, here in America, you can have all types of religions. You have Christians, you have Jews, you have Muslims, you have atheists. There is no contradiction to be an American, yet to adhere to a different religion. And we want our students to feel at ease being American, yet have a different religion than the majority of the people are. As a matter of fact, we have very welcoming neighbors, and sometimes they put that sign, "We welcome our neighbor." And the old lady across the street told me once that I'm loving having a school in front of me. I love to see the kids, these beautiful kids every day. And the rest of the neighbors are very friendly. Oh, they always say and stop by and they say, please feel welcomed in here. And if you need anything, please let us know. As a matter of fact, another neighbor also came and planted some flowers in the front of our gate here, which was a very nice gesture of her.
I was born in Boulder, Colorado, and since then my family's moved around quite a lot. So from Boulder to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and then to Phoenix, Arizona, and then to Maryland, and Canada, and now we're in Boston. So it's been quite around the United States and Canada.
So I grew up in the suburbs of Pittsburgh, which is predominantly white. It was an interesting experience. There are a few incidents, but definitely I've learned a lot. And now that I moved into the city of Pittsburgh, where there's more diversity, I really enjoy living here. Yeah, so the biggest thing I recall is in 9th grade. This was like a year after I started wearing my hijab. My friend and I, who also wears a hijab, went to the mall and this guy shouted Al-Qaeda at us, like across the mall, and we didn't really know what to do. We just stood there in silence until he left. And that was like the first time I actually faced something that for a minute I was like, what's going on? Am I safe here? But recently, after the elections, I've gotten a few stares, few glances, comments, but other than that, it's been fine.
I'd say in elementary school, it wasn't that different because as a little kid, religion was mostly just something that happened at home. Fortunately, I can't say too much has happened to my family. There have been instances where my mom, because she wears the headscarf, she's come home and talked of incidents at the supermarket where she's had some issues. And I think largely these issues are due to ignorance, people not understanding what the religion is or having been fed false information. I haven't experienced too much issues with my religion, but I would say that the issues have been confined to sort of jokes between friends. For example, in elementary school, after the 9/11 attacks, it was pretty common for me where my friends would make jokes, like terrorist jokes. Often, most of the time, not to hurt me, not to be hateful. So yeah, I'd say overall, I'm pretty fortunate. And in elementary school, and middle school, and high school, I definitely, from time to time, I got these sort of terrorist jokes. And at this point, I think I've learned how to deal with it if it comes up, if those jokes come up.
So the two main issues I can think of are finding halal food and finding a place to pray. And recently, Pitt has brought halal food into their cafeteria, but it's only there during certain hours. So if you want to grab dinner, it's not an option. And then finding a place to pray, there's one big prayer place on campus, which is really nice if you want to pray together. But if you're on a different part of campus, like upper campus or lower campus, it's really hard to get there. And you have to end up finding a corner and praying there.
So in college life, things are pretty hectic. It's pretty common that I'll leave early in the morning and not actually come home till late in the night. So in that time, I have essentially 4 of the 5 daily prayers that I need to do. And at any given moment, I need to be ready to just drop what I'm doing and do one of my prayers. So I do quite mean at any moment. So I've done this in the middle of midterms and exams and just middle of classes where I just need to raise my hand and for example, in an exam and just ask the professor, hey, I need to pray, and he'll let me.
So I think it depends. It's something you definitely have to get used to. I know a lot of my friends they've gotten to a point where it's more awkward for the person that's walking in than it is for them once you do it more and more. But for a lot of people, it is an uncomfortable situation to be in because you're praying, you can't say anything either. And then especially like if you're a girl who doesn't wear hijab and has to put on a hijab for that, then that's another step already. So it is something that you have to kind of get used to that. And after you do, it's just another awkward encounter with somebody else.
Well, yeah, being Muslim, it is our responsibility to give back and take care of charity is part of our primary faith. So it's one of those things. We don't do it to get good name, but I mean it's just our duty to pay it back to the community.
You know, these are statements that we have prepared somewhere, but I can tell you that right off the top of my head, the free clinic serves people who are underinsured, who have no other access to medical services, who at the same time, their income levels and so on do not qualify them for other mechanisms that would kick in if they were really in a very difficult situation. So the mission is to provide care for those people who need it without, any discrimination for race, religion, or persuasion, or where they come from, or what their background is. The community in Braddock in particular had a gaping need after the hospital was taken down.
So from both standpoints, I think it's from consumers and patients and even general population and administrative staff. It's very supportive.
It has, as much as it has helped them, it has also helped us. Just
being ambassadors of goodwill,
yeah.
I think.
And when you go there and you work, and even for a few hours, going is always tough. You have to, you feel lazy that you don't want to go, but the time that you spend over there, you feel satisfied. And one of my colleagues, he said it to me that I always love coming here where I don't get paid. I don't have to do anything. I just work out of my free will, rather than when I go to my own clinic.
For me, Pittsburgh is the best. Honestly, and I don't just say that. I mean, everybody I feel like travel to, I tell them, I've been to a lot of different places. I've been lucky enough to travel a little bit. And coming home to Pittsburgh, I never feel better than when I come through the tunnel and I see Pittsburgh. And I always tell myself, you just drop me off anywhere, and you're close to Pittsburgh, I'll get home fine. Even if I have to hitchhike or walk, I'll be okay. So for me, Pittsburgh is home. I love it.
So I think Pittsburgh has a history of compared with other, this can't be a very flat statement like that. It needs probably more verification, but I can safely say Pittsburgh, compared with other cities, has been doing very well as far as people's understanding of Muslims and Islam. And we had, right after September 11, people come to the Islamic Center and saying, if any women with hijab wanted to go shopping, I would volunteer to go with her. We had a lot of calls of that sort, which we considered very, very nice of the neighbors of the Islamic centers and also the people of Pittsburgh.
We just want to know what you need. If it's more money, let us know. If it's people outside your next service, protecting you, let us know, we'll be there. If you need organizers on the ground, Engage will provide them. If you need anything at all, if you need food for the families, if you just need somebody to come to the grocery store because you don't feel safe in this city, we'll be there, and I'm sure everybody in the room would say the same thing. We're here for the community. And I'd just like to note that was the same offer made to me by this community when this election happened that was so negative, and so the spike in hate crimes against Muslims. And then after 9/11, the same thing was made to our community. So we're just repaying the favor. So thank you for that.
In Pittsburgh specifically, I've always felt very welcomed in the city. But surprisingly, I think what most people don't realize is that right outside of the city, maybe 15, 20 minutes from any point in the city, you will find pockets of really deep hatred all over the place. While I have not experienced anything negative, I do have friends that have experienced a lot of negative interactions with people. And I know that there are a lot of people in the community who fear for their lives. We are a very diverse community, and so there are definitely people among us who are more privileged than others.
Well, so on one hand, I'm just this white, heavily tattooed dude, so walking down the street, there's no indication that I'm Muslim, so I don't really have any of discrimination on that. In terms of any of my other Muslim friends in the community, I wouldn't say I'm with them enough to really say one way or the other. I think they have it a little better in Pittsburgh because I think Pittsburgh is more racist against black people than maybe Arab or South Asian Muslims.
Surviving has been a struggle. We, as a group of people, I think most people are aware of the kinds of struggles and inequities we have faced. And we faced them in that time, not so much because we were Muslims, but because we were black, because we were African Americans. And so you couple that with being Muslim, you would think, well, that's, could have been even more reason for discrimination. But for African Americans in Pittsburgh and in the country, the discrimination has been based less on religion and more on race and ethnic group.
Actually, yeah, I do remember this was previous summer. There were some posters, at least one, I don't know how many, put up on campus near the library. Something to do with the Prophet Muhammad and some sort of derogatory term, and something to do with saying that he would just cut off people's heads or something like that. I don't remember the details. Fortunately, MSA members on campus reached out to the Center for Student Diversity and Inclusion, and they took the poster down.
Yeah, so initially election night, there was a lot of concerns, especially for safety just in general. Like the next day I had teachers pull me to the side and was like, if anybody says, does, or if you have any concerns, like, we're here for you. So the biggest thing initially was safety, but after the elections, I think it kind of triggered a response, and the Muslim community here in Pittsburgh was part of that response, and they were able to kind of get our presence out more and have Pittsburgh notice us and say, we need more safety just in general, especially recently. So that I take that as like a sign of hope. It kind of triggered us into action. But the biggest concern I had initially was safety just in general.
I don't think we have any problem. Once in a while, though, just we have, so that the picture is not 100% rosy, once in a while, very rare occasions, we had somebody that threw a rock, and probably you can see if I removed the blinds, you would see a crack. And but this was minor incident.
Well, I think if people just keep an open mind, because even in my profession, I get those looks that basically tell me, oh, look, poor woman, she's covered. And that's just a judgment based on a head cover, like I'm suppressed or I don't have and I get that from colleagues.
So one of my classmates, ironically enough, is Iraqi. She wears hijab, but we have felt that she hasn't been able to get some practicum experiences here in the city because she wears hijab. Out of my entire cohort, she actually has the most clinical experience. So there's really no reason she wouldn't, be a fit for the position aside from that she wears hijab.
I'm a physician. I've been dealing with things, almost every day. We talk to patients, people, and I have many examples when I can say that ignorance to a level where it surprises me. So one of the persons who told me one time, I'm just giving another example, she said, isn't it part of your religion that you will kill all the infidels and everyone who's not a believer? I said, if it was part of my faith, one of us would be dead right now.
There are several, but something which is very disappointing to me is the connotations of Allahu Akbar. For us as Muslims, Allahu Akbar is an expression of many different things. We scream Allahu Akbar in excitement, in joy, in reflection. It is the most used phrase while we do our prayers. We invoke God. We invoke Allah by saying Allahu Akbar, and it means God is great. And so it's a phrase very close to my heart. Like growing up in Pakistan, I saw it inscribed inside the buses, written on rickshaws. As I said, we would say Allahu Akbar whenever. It's an expression of joy and excitement for us as well. And but it has come to be used in such a wrong way.
My understanding of Islam, or the way I was raised as Islam, it has never been a religion to use force or hatred toward others. I have always been taught to be nice and welcoming and generous toward others.
They assume that Muslims are dirty, maybe they don't bathe as much or something, right? But that's really far from it. We have to clean ourselves to make our prayers like 5 times a day, you know, or sometimes more.
Islam is meant to liberate women, to help them to achieve the highest thing that they could achieve.
So definitely some misconceptions that people have about being a Muslim woman is that we are coerced into believing what we believe in, to wearing what we wear, to looking the way we look. And obviously that's not true.
Now, all Islamic societies are very different, and American Muslims are a society of their own. So what might be true of women in Saudi Arabia is not true of Muslim women in United States, or in Pakistan, or in Indonesia.
I had a nurse tell me, does your husband force you to cover your head? And I was going to tell her, did he force you to change your name? Because to me, changing, when a woman gets married, and to me, she basically abandoned her lineage and takes on and is only known as Mrs. So-and-so. That is, to me, is extremely oppressive. But to you, it's a culture. You don't even think of it that way. So I kept my last name, and my husband kept his last name, and actually I tried to talk him into taking my last name, but...
I chose to put on the hijab. I chose to put it on as a challenge that me and my best friend at the time put out towards each other during the month of Ramadan, and then we just kind of kept with it after the month was over. Obviously, my reasons for wearing the hijab have changed over time as I have grown over time.
As most other organized religions have great examples of women who were able to realize their potential and to do things to benefit humanity, and it clearly shows that they were not oppressed. Let me think. Parting words, I don't know. There is a surah in the Quran that I especially like. In English it says, verily by the token of time through the ages, man is at loss except who have faith, do righteous deeds, and join together in the mutual teachings of truth, patience, and constancy. That's what I would leave with them.
I think Islam is a great religion with a strong set of principles to live your life by and a way to make a really great society. No Muslim is perfect, and I think we see that a lot in the media. But I'm just trying to live a good life. I think we all just sort of want happiness in this world, and if you believe it, in the next.
So yeah, interact and talk and go to each other's places of worship and just learn about each other.
I hope I don't sound defensive, because sometimes when you are trying to remove misunderstanding, you sound a little, you can't help it, you sound a little defensive. But I hope whatever it sounds, it would create more atmosphere of understanding and interfaith dialogue and spreading the language of love and peace among his people, instead of the other way around.
Come to our events. We have many events every year at the mosques around the city here in Pittsburgh, ICP, and a couple other ones in Monroeville. We have social as well as religious gathering that I hope they can come and see what the Muslim community in Pittsburgh looks like.
And if we just talk to each other, when people meet me and they meet my family, I think at the end of the day they have a better idea of this family. And I think that's important. We just keep doing that. We just keep meeting each other, keep talking to each other, and getting this thing open. I always think here is it's an easy way to do it, because people come in and meet us and talk to us. We can just pick that up a little bit more. Everybody can go out and talk to somebody else. We'll be all right.